All right, welcome to the Principia CrossFit podcast. Today we are doing episode 3 with Dan Wayman. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Do you ever look up at the stars and think, why is there a D in fridge, but not in refrigerator?
No, I don't.
Let's unpack this for a minute.
Yeah, let's get into the emotions
Really,
of this.
where does DGE really come into play?
D is what Dan starts with, which is just obviously an amazing letter, so it should be in every word. But
wow, I think we could just end it right there. I think you nailed it.
I'm good with that. I'm solid.
That's a perfect answer to the perfect question. All right, so now that all the important questions are over, let's get into some more, whatever questions. All right. Dan has been a member literally the whole time we've been open, from day one till now and further, because we're not closed. So what was some of the issues, or what was the main issue that you were having before Principia existed, before I took over and all that?
Similar to everybody else, I don't think I could narrow it down to one issue. I definitely was dissatisfied with my life. So there was some depression and anxiety issues. But I also just through, a sedentary lifestyle, I always had an issue with my back that, stemmed from an injury I had a long time ago, but just would recur every 6 months or so, kept popping up, and nothing seemed to fix it. Go to the doctor, take meds, go to the chiropractor, get popped a couple times, it'd go away for a little bit, but always came back and pretty consistent. Every 6 months, every 3-4 months, it'd flare up. Nothing seemed to relieve it. At least traditional methods didn't seem to relieve it. And so, I'd probably pin those as my two big issues.
Okay. So just to be clear, the two main issues were depression, anxiety being one issue, because that's just kind of how we loop those together oftentimes, right?
One and the same.
And then the back pain being a recurring problem. Real quick, when you would have some of that back pain, what would you do? Besides go to the doctor, how does that change your day-to-day activity?
So, obviously that starts, first thing in the morning, you don't feel like getting out of bed, or when you do go to get out of bed, it's that initial twinge. And so it's, I don't want to get out of bed. Once you get out of bed, you get moving, it seemed to take care of it. But, at that time in my life, I was working a job where I was at a desk a lot. So, you'd force yourself to get through the day, you'd get to work, but you'd get planted in that chair and hunkered over a computer. And, before too long, you'd need to get up, and you'd get up and it was painful. And so you avoided doing anything other than what you had to do for the day. But what I did to deal with it, obviously, yes, doctor, normal routine, anti-inflammatory, and a little bit of a painkiller, which never seemed to touch it. You'd stretch. Or at least stretches that you knew and thought would relieve some of the pain, but typically, a week later it'd go away and you could cope with it again, but it was always there. Never really went away, but you got to where you could.
Would you say that it got to a point where it was kind of into your consciousness a little bit too much? Like maybe the pain was actually gone, but you still were like, I don't know if I want to do that because that could affect my back immediately.
I can remember we had gone to Utah for a work retreat, and we were going to ride the bobsled course. So they literally put you in the same bobsled they use in the Olympics. Okay. And I can remember sitting down in it, and it's not comfortable. It's this hard shell. It's this wood seat. It's not padded at all. And I can remember going down it and it was just in my head the whole time. One little thing on this little trip is going to hurt my back to the point that I'm not going to move for the next 3 or 4 days. So even though it didn't, it was there. Yeah. It was you definitely chose your activities based on, is that going to make this flare up?
We talked about it a little bit in the last podcast, very, very little, but it's kind of eliminating your freedom of choice a little bit when you have something like that. And I find that the lower back especially is one of those areas where gosh, there's so much happening, and there's so many things that you think are relieving things, like stretching is a big one, but oftentimes stretching is actually causing more damage to the area, but you feel relief. It's like this like fake thing that happens. Like all it does is kind of desensitize you for about 5 to 10 minutes. And so you think that that's an effective way to do it. And then what happens is that as things come back to normal, it actually gets worse sometimes. Not always. Sometimes stretching is absolutely the right protocol for it. But I find with those 6-month things, it's usually not a stretching thing. It's usually something else.
Well, not to get ahead of you, hopefully, but the reality is I always associated it with being, just my lower back that hurt. Mm-hmm. But through a lot that we've done and a lot that I've learned here, I've realized it's not. It really probably wasn't just my lower back. Right. It was a combination of other things. And I mean, from the calf all the way up, there are multiple other parts of my body that
it's all connected,
manifest that as back pain.
I heard it once on a different podcast. I wish I could say exactly what it was, but there's these guys in California that I believe run a PT clinic, and they have people do some exercises where they'll do like a lunge or something like that, and they'll rub the inside of their thumb right here or something in order to get rid of pain in the shoulder, or do a lunge and get stronger by doing that, just weird things like that. But that's just what they're doing, is showing how the body's all connected to this system. And oftentimes when we do fitness growing up in physical education right now is kind of a joke. They don't teach you how to move. They just show you what the movement is, and then you have to kind of do your best job to model it. But ultimately it's like, well, how were you breathing during that? Which muscles were being activated? Where did you feel it? Could you feel it in the right muscle at the right time? And a lot of times people miss that ball completely. And that's usually why people get that recurring pain, is because there hasn't been enough time to build some consciousness around how your body's working together, amongst a million other potential things too, right? So the path is never the same for any individual, but it's cool to hear that the lower back pain, I remember talking about it when you first started. It happened one time, I think, and then kind of since it hasn't.
Yeah, so it was, I literally view it as as with everything here, I feel like, several years later, there's really not a year or a month or a week that goes by that I haven't learned something. I can look back and recall certain things we did and certain times where it's flared up and you've pulled me aside and taken a few minutes and let's try this. And not all of them worked. Mm-hmm. But some of them did. And as I did those, certain things clicked and you would give me other cues. One day, for instance, in particular, of all things, I would never associate it through past experience that an exercise would help relieve back pain. But we were doing sumo deadlifts. I was standing right here. Mm-hmm. And it clicked. It was, through the right movement that helped strengthen and identify, maybe areas that I was using one muscle more than another, or just good movement. And it was like past that, like it rarely, if it did flare up, it was minor, and I felt like I could deal with it through going back to maybe those basics and those exercises that you taught me.
Cool. Yeah, and we're talking about, as far as from like a coaching perspective, that takes years to develop. And for you, it took a long time. For us, like, it took times where I did have to work with you a little bit one-on-one to kind of test some things out. We needed to test some things in order to know what was going to work. And now I'm proud to say that all our coaching staff has an actual like structured program to take people through, that we can identify those things ahead of time before they're ever an issue within the gym, before they're ever in a class, if we need to go that far into it. And I'm happy to say that we can do that now and then effectively program for that person, so it's never going to be a problem in the first place. For some people. Now, that being said, it's all a journey, and sometimes there's going to be aches and pains, and we have to learn what we need to learn from those. And sometimes there are important lessons with aches and pains that we need to pay attention to. Sometimes that lesson is, you're doing too much, do less, bro. Right?
No, you're doing too much,
right?
Yeah. Do less than that.
No, I'm still doing too much. Do a little less. Yeah.
Now you're just laying there.
One of my favorite cues. Well, you got to do something now. Yeah. Now you're just doing nothing. Okay, so biggest problems. Let's get back on track a little bit. Back pain, depression, anxiety. Before Principia CrossFit, what were some of the frustrations you felt trying to deal with those things, besides the bobsled example specifically?
Frustrations trying to deal with them. I had tried some other things. I had some friends that I'd go running with. We did an Ironman event. We've done quite a few marathons. And yeah, that exercise, and even with friends, helped relieve some of that. Mm-hmm. But I still wasn't moving well. It's hard to explain. Like it was exercise. You got the same, release of endorphins and that little bit of happiness that comes with that. But
it was still happening every 6 months.
It was still happening,
Yeah.
And in fact, like maybe causing other issues.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do recall getting, injured more often. Little plantar fasciitis, like hamstrings tight, other things that pop up, and the cure was to just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it helped, but it wasn't solving the problem.
Okay, so what was specifically, if we can get specific, what was different about how we went about it? I know we kind of named one instance with the sumo deadlift variation.
Well, I have always felt and still feel like one of the things that are different about Principia in particular, and I remember not liking it initially, where there were those days that weren't performance focused, meaning, mm-hmm. It's not about, completing the workout at RX. It's, and sorry, I'm getting off track, but specifically there was a lot of flexibility and mobility days, mm-hmm. Gymnastics days.
Yeah. That
I remember looking at and like, man, I'm not going to go today. I'm like, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Well, through those, and through that approach, I feel like everything else is better, and you identify on those days through those exercises,
whatever Thursday workouts.
Yeah, that man, I need those things, and if I do those things, then this gets better. Either my mm-hmm. performance gets better, or honestly, like just my overall life satisfaction. Bending down, standing up, moving around, going bobsledding,
Yeah, I mean, it goes, we just did a huge goal setting workshop, and one of the things I told people while they were doing the exercises, no longer should you be treating a CrossFit gym as a means of putting you on your ass and then trying to leave. It should actually make you feel like it's enabled the rest of your day, not disabled your day, is kind of what I've been saying to people. And those Thursday workouts are perfect examples of that, because you come in and while like on paper it's like that doesn't look like much, but then when you're doing it, you're actually still challenged quite a bit, but you're able to stay in control because of the nature of the movements. And then you leave kind of feeling more energetic and less put down, because some of those workouts, when we go all out at max intensity, what are we really doing? We are taking our central nervous system and throwing it into a grave, basically, and then starting to cover it back up, making it very difficult to produce anything productive the rest of the day. So how are you going to make a good decision for dinner that night if you are just like, I'm smoked, I just want to go pick something up?
Right.
So I've been really trying to get people to wrap their heads around the fact that performance will come. This is a process for your whole life. It's not a 1 year, 2 year fix. It is the rest of your life. And we're enabling the rest of your life, not disabling it. So if you're constantly doing your workouts and feeling beat up and tired and like you can't function like a normal human being can function, then you're not doing functional fitness. You're living a lie, basically. And I think because of the competitive nature of the things that we're doing, we sometimes need to just make sure that we wrap people back into intention. So I take those Thursday workouts as an opportunity to get people more in tune with what they should be feeling during a workout
The funny thing is I would counter that a little bit in that some of those Thursday workouts were
Oh yeah, some of them are
way harder.
Gymnastics ones especially.
And even if it was a Ramwa disc, just a stretching day, some of those are more difficult than the day I just got to come in and.
Well, explain that though. Like, it's not difficult intensity, is it?
Not difficult intent. It is definitely mental.
Yeah.
And as equally challenging mentally as the
Right.
hardest of hard workouts.
Right, and that's what. So your counter is really just a circle, right? So it's not the intensity anymore. Now it's just mentally difficult.
Instead of
Maybe
physically intense,
positionally
yeah.
difficult too,
Correct.
right? You're holding a position and that's difficult. But you're not stressing your system by lifting the heaviest loads possible and things like that.
No, and you're
And moving
identifying,
fast.
things that ironically as a kid were easy to do. And now all of a sudden as an adult, it's like, why is that so hard?
Yeah. When it doesn't happen suddenly too, but people perceive it that way because it's like there's that gap where you just stop being a kid for a while where
Right.
you're like so eager to be an adult.
Right.
And then when you're an adult, you wish you could do the same things you did when you were a kid. You know?
Right.
So yeah, it seems overnight because your consciousness, but ultimately it was a process of you falling out of your body's ability to do things.
Correct.
And it's, we look at a baby squat, it's fucking beautiful. But when you see an adult squat, it's a little different usually.
And that's actually been, not to derail on that subject, but that, like, it seems so simple and basic, but like to this day, like I still feel like my squat is constantly changing and improving.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I conscientiously, you do look at a baby now, it's like, oh, that's beautiful and perfect.
Yeah.
I wish mine looked like that.
Yeah.
And there's, 100 different squat styles in the gym.
Yeah, I like to tell I tell our coaches anyway, I do a good job of telling them, I should tell everybody, that it's easy for people to see a movement when it's correct and be like, that's correct. But it's not always easy to articulate what you're finding wrong and what you're finding right about it. So like you see a baby squat and you're like, I don't know what it is, but that looks perfect and that looks easy and that looks comfortable and that looks like what I should be able to do. But when you see a grown-ass man do it or a woman, then you might say, it doesn't look like that, but I can't say what's wrong. So as coaches, that's our whole journey is like, let's figure out how we can communicate what's wrong so that people can fix it and make it right.
Yeah, I'll add a point to that too. One great thing is, like, I've gotten some great tips from you and I've learned a lot, but the diversity of the coaches has, because another coach might say this almost the exact same thing you did, but say it slightly different and it clicks.
Oh, absolutely.
So having access to multiple coaches is
multiple perspectives, huge.
Fantastic.
I agree 100%. Okay, can you take me through a moment when you realized that what we were doing was working for you?
I probably can't identify a moment. I can say, not to be a broken record, and what you've probably heard from everybody else, but it's constant. I constantly feel like what I'm doing, and by coming here and going through the paces that I know that it's working. That's what makes me come back. It's like a good addiction. It's those days that I don't make it, the guilt associated with that, not because somebody else is making me feel bad. I mean, the community is good about supporting you. They're going to make you feel bad for not showing. But I know that when I come, I'm better off.
Yeah.
I'm able to deal with my day, whatever that day is, better. I feel better. You overheard you earlier talking about, confidence, and confidence is a big part of that. Like when I feel like I'm here and I do things well and it clicks, then I'm more confident in the rest of my world. So a moment would be hard to pinpoint, but it's been lots of moments.
And we talked about a couple. We talked about the sumo deadlift moment. That you can
say
that's a moment, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's a couple things that me and my wife Catherine have really tried to identify, like what it is that we are helping people with. Like, let's identify it and try to be as specific as we can. And we kind of narrow it down to two categories, and that's control and confidence. Basically, you're going to get one of the two or both. Like,
right.
And honestly, what those enable from there is an enormous amount of not only like actual health biomarker things like blood pressure or whatever, but also just like those subjective things. Like you look in the mirror and you know that you can do it. Whatever it is, maybe it's just dealing with a nasty coworker, you feel more apt to deal with that kind of stress because of the confidence or the control you have over your emotions, right? And some of that is gleaned from just learning a lesson in the gym. So
lots of lessons in the gym.
Yeah.
I would say.
Well, yeah, accumulation of lessons maybe.
Yeah, because it's either I could break like the value of the gym down into a few categories. One is I really appreciate what you've done and what you've created and your coaching style and the team that you've assembled, and I think that's great. But the community is probably almost an equal part of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And when you talk about dealing with the rest of your world as a byproduct of what you've accomplished in the gym, there are so many days where you come in and you look at a workout and you think, I don't think I can do that. Like I'm going to have to figure out a way to do that a different way. Well, then before you know it, you've finished it, you've done it exactly as you've outlined, and you're like, man, I feel good about that.
Yeah.
But then there's also those days that you come in and you're maybe not having the best day, and you bounce into the community, and the community's supportive, and or somebody else has shared an experience that has helped you. Well, then you go out and deal with the rest of the world, and I've always said, and I will continue to say, like this is a free antidepressant, so to speak. It's cheaper than medicine, and I can go out and deal with the rest of the world without a medication or.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
I will. I've always hated it, but at some point in my life, I took an antidepressant. I always hated it. Like I didn't want to be addicted to something.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt like I was addicted to something, but that helped me cope. But I wasn't doing anything else to cope.
Okay.
I was like I mentioned, I was running.
You took an antidepressant at some point in time.
Correct.
When did you get off antidepressants?
It's probably been a little over a year now.
Okay.
And I haven't taken anything. And I 100% attribute that to what I've learned and gained here.
Cool.
Go ahead.
How much, if you know off the top of your head, how much were you spending on antidepressants?
I don't know.
Don't know?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I try to make that connection so that it's very real with people. This costs like $135 a month, and I know there's a couple people who've been on diabetes medication and now are off of it. That saved them the price of their membership and then some, because diabetes medication can cost upwards of $200 to $400 a month. And when you sign up for a $135 subscription with us and you're off your diabetes medications within a month or 2 months, now you're actually saving money by joining a gym. And a lot of people look at that price point too much. So I was going to try to relate it.
I think that would be great to relate it. I would say it'd be very hard to measure, even though there is a dollar figure associated with, going up and picking up a prescription. I don't know that you could relate it to what it like really saves you.
True. And then that would just be a piece, right? It would be
Correct.
a percentage really
Correct.
of what you're gleaning off of something like this. But no, I get what you're coming from.
But I would like dollar for dollar, say membership versus they probably balance each other out.
Oh yeah.
There's obviously other benefits.
There's way more benefits that you're getting. It's not just that.
Yeah.
No, not by no means. But no, and a lot of people do like they have a hard time tearing away from that financial barrier, which that's the barrier that you need to hurdle in order to achieve success. And you're just letting it be in your way because it is a little more challenging on your budget. When ultimately for some of those people taking medications, you're just going to save money. Like that's all we're going to do for you.
Well, and it's funny, like when you talk about, if we're going to get into that, like the dollar figure associated with the membership, I can remember, so a friend took me to CrossFit for the first time, and I remember him telling me what it was going to cost, and it was similar. It was maybe slightly less, but it's like, man, that's a lot for a gym membership.
Yeah.
And of course today, you run into people and they're paying $25 for XYZ fitness or whatever, and they think that does it. Well, I can remember a point thinking that was a lot of money, but I can look at it now and I'd be I mean, we've talked, I'd be
Yeah,
willing
we've
to
had-
pay more to get the same thing.
Dan's literally asked to pay more money.
Because I feel like it's a bargain. I feel like what I get through the coaching, through the experiences, through the community is a value.
I do want to say, like, I said it as a joke, but I think he's literally asked to pay more money. And he's not the only person. I've actually had other people text me and say, you only charged me this much for the month, and it's our normal rate. That's not enough. So get in while the prices are hot. Okay. What's life like now that you're not, I mean, I'm not going to say you're not dealing with depression and anxiety. I think we're always in a cycle of dealing with that, especially with weather changes and fluctuations. But what's life like now with kind of the results you've seen?
I mean, not to put it too simply, but it's just better. Yes, it's a constant game, if you want to use that word. Mm-hmm. I will always be working on that. I will always be conscientious of that, of those issues. But I feel like life is much better because I have tools to deal with whatever it is. I can be having a horrible day professionally at work and or personally, and I can come to the gym and either work it out or, interact with enough of the community that it's a tip, it's a hug, it's a hello, it's a sharing an experience that it helps. It makes it easier.
Cool. Do you want to talk about the noon class just real quick? So
you mean the best class?
The noon class is a very lively bunch. And that's when he's talking about community, that's a big part of what he's talking about. He's not just isolating it to the noon class all the time, although they would probably argue he is. But I know Dan has fluctuated around to all the classes at some point in time. And what is it about the noon class that actually makes the day so much more special for you?
So back up a little bit. Yes, I've had the pleasure of hitting almost every class, and that again, like a tribute to the gym and the people. There's not a class that I don't feel welcome in. I might not know everybody in the class, but you learn them easily. Everybody seems inviting and welcoming, and it's great. The noon class, though, is its own dynamic. It's the trust tree, if you will. Everybody can be themselves. Everybody has a good time. If somebody's not having a good time, the group is quick to draw that out and adjust and deal with that. And it's I don't want to brag too much because then other people want to go to the noon class, and we've already been identified as a clique, and it's not. But it's
No, I do think it's fun every time I come to the noon class, whether I'm just participating or I'm coaching. It's always fun to see the noon class react with people who aren't typically in the noon class, because there's always like a water testing really quick. Like they're gonna say a joke and be like, "What's this person's reaction?"
How did they react?
And then they do quickly adjust. If they find that the reaction wasn't great, they are great about adjusting and becoming more gracious and less of a pain in the ass. But
I can remember like one particular day we were doing Ramwad, which is I don't look forward to. That's a tough 45
Ramwad is
minutes.
stretching.
And but you know what? With not to call anybody out, but like with the help of a couple other people in the group, it was the Ramwad went quickly and was not as painful. So
there were some comments made. I'm sure.
It was fun.
All right. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. This is Dan Wayman, Principia CrossFit Podcast, or Principia Podcast, whichever one we want to call it. CrossFat. You guys might have missed that. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you being as involved with the community as you are and having done everything that you've done for me. And honestly, sharing your feedback has been super valuable for me, and I really appreciate everything you're doing. I'm so excited that we're going to still be a part of it.
Thanks for having me.